To show you this is not just a New York City issue, it's an issue throughout America.
And so the city is now appealing that federal judge's ruling that stop and frisk is unconstitutional, calling it indirect racial profiling. And that was the argument from Trayvon Martin's mother, Sabrina Fulton.
You can't give people the authority, whether it's a civilian or police officers, the right to just stop somebody because of the color of their skin.
This is a debate being faced in major cities around the country. And to talk about it, Amy Holmes, anchor of Real News at The Blaze and a former speechwriter for former Senate Majority Leader Bill Frist, and Angela Rye, political strategist with Impact Strategies. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having us.
So, Angela, let me pick up where Ray Kelly left off. Mayor Bloomberg wrote an op-ed in today's Washington Post. I'm going to quote part of it. 90% of all people killed in our city and 90% of all those who commit the murders and other violent crimes are black and Hispanic. Every American has a right to walk down the street without being targeted by police because of his or her race or ethnicity. At the same time, every American has a right to walk down the street without getting mugged or killed. And he also points out that the majority of police on patrol, at least in New York, are minorities themselves. Do the numbers justify stop and frisk?
Absolutely not, Chris. What you see with Mayor Bloomberg's defense is that he is using racial profiling. He cannot say it's not racial profiling. And in fact, racial profiling is lazy policing. Instead of taking preventative measures rather than a stop and frisk, which I would think is a day late and a dollar short, there needs to be some type of community policing program where folks get involved on the early side so there's not such a contentious relationship with people of color and police. With pre-stop and frisk, you had the Central Park 5. Post-stop and frisk, you have Sean Bell and most recently Kamani Gray, and those are just the examples that I can think of at the top of my mind. So this is a huge problem, and it needs to be addressed immediately.
In fact, Amy, an analysis by the New York Civil Liberties Union says that innocent New Yorkers have been subjected to police stops and street interrogations more than 4 million times since 2002. Now, the mayor does like to quantify the number of lives he believes are saved by stop and frisk, but what about the mistrust that develops between police and the citizens of any given city?
I think that's a huge problem, and in fact, what we understand from stop and frisk, that the majority of arrests, I think over 90%, have to do with marijuana possession. So while I understand the mayor is, trying to explain that this is sort of the first step in policing of a community and bringing down violent crime, I'll tell you, I live in the West Village in New York City, and there's no stop and frisk policy there, and I could point to you 10 people last night who were smoking pot openly, and they didn't get arrested. So I'm very concerned that stop and frisk is targeting certain communities, people of color, in a disproportionate way, and I can tell you, as someone who lives in Manhattan, they could come and find crime in my neighborhood, but they don't because it's, frankly, where a lot of wealthy white people live.
Well, Angela, the mayor would say that is exactly the point, or the commissioner would say that is exactly the point, that you focus the attention in the neighborhoods where you know that they have the most crime. That, in fact, in a lot of places, they do it a different way. If you're rich, you're going to have more of a police presence because they're going to make sure nothing bad happens in your neighborhood. He says we're, in fact, the polar opposite of that. We're going to go to the neighborhoods where we know crime occurs, and that's where we're going to use stop and frisk, and we're going to use it, again, he points out, with smart policing that is done by a majority of minority police officers.
But the problem here is, Chris, just like there's institutionalized racism, there's institutionalized racial profiling. So even if the officers look like the people in the communities, if the relationship is automatically contentious just because the color of your skin makes you suspicious, that's a tremendous problem. There's no probable cause needed for stop and frisk. It's just how you look. It's just suspicion. And just like Trayvon Martin's mother mentioned in the clip you played, the color of your skin should not be reason to automatically stop someone. That is exactly the problem we have. That's why we have gun violence not only being perpetrated by people or people on the street, Latinos and black men, it's also the officers. And we've seen that time and time again, and I've used some of those examples earlier in the program.
And Chris, the point that I would make is to say, why is a crime in one neighborhood something worthy of stop and frisk, but it's not in another neighborhood. If you go down to NYU, why aren't those students being stopped and frisked, even though you and I both know what's going on down there, and they don't get that interaction with police that folks living, uptown do. So again, what is the definition of criminality, and why is it that police officers go after one community very aggressively and don't go after another community that we can observe with our own eyes are committing the same crimes?
Amy Holmes, Angela Rye, thanks to